Very excited to be here with you today. As Susanna mentioned, I run a high-tech circus. We're a big band of nerds in downtown Los Angeles. And we, for years, were doing a bunch of immersive experiences that we could install in our backyard and ultimately ended up doing them with a lot of different brands. We started with things like rooms of laser beams, pretty quickly started making escape rooms for Warner Brothers, helped Dave & Buster's launch their VR attractions, the first VR attractions they did VR for IndyCar, the Super Bowl, the Olympics, lots and lots of VR capture before, and then even a cloud that rains tequila. We did this for the Mexican Board of Tourism. Every time it would rain in Berlin, it would rain tequila out of our cloud. But things caught kind of the most fun when we started focusing on impact. We built a big traveling carnival called Steam Carnival, and this was sort of early days of the term STEAM. We wanted to use all the creativity and fun of play as a way to get kids excited about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. But STEAM, really, that art really captured that element for us. It had a whole variety of different attractions, all kind, 120,000 square feet, one half all the attractions, and one half a bunch of hands-on projects where kids could learn about science and engineering. We even had some tentpole attractions like, remember the old dunk tank where you throw a ball and you fall in water? We thought, water is pretty fun. Fire is awesome. So ours was the dunk tank flambe. You would throw a ball and not be engulfed in water, but a big fireball. You wouldn't die because you're wearing that wonderful fire suit. So really looking for ways to really kind of captivate the imagination. This is maybe one of my favorite photos in our whole canon. That kid, that's tattooed on that kid's brain. So we kept going from there, and there were a bunch of trends that we were kind of playing around in, and on the outskirts of. The first was, real consumer appetite, wanting experiential, right? Really looking for experiential. JWT puts out an annual deck on all the trends that they see happening, and as early as 2014, we're talking about experiential and immersive as kind of the next wave. Forbes saying, hey, particularly millennials care about experiences, over owning things. It's not about stuff anymore. Hey, maybe you've got a Ferrari, in your garage or a Ferrari on your t-shirt. That's not nearly as cool as having an awesome Instagram, right? And really incredible life experience. And I just love this photo that went viral under the caption, "The Bored Millennials," because, they're could be anywhere. They're at an amusement park and they're bored, right? And so I kind of loved the idea that even an amusement park was sort of not enough anymore, that you really needed to be kind of more interactive, more active than that. The second one was around retail, right? You read the news and, oh my God, it's the retail apocalypse, but really it's about retail changing, right? In the wake of things like Macy's and Nordstrom going away, you have all of the entertainment, or all of the solutions switching to things that require your body, right? Physical stuff. Food and beverage, you gotta be there to drink the martini and eat the burger. Health, wellness, and beauty, SoulCycle, Peloton, juice bars, entertainment, obviously, and then work and learning, things like co-working spaces, WeWork. I actually think there's a gap in the learning space. General Assembly was acquired by a training company. There's not, where the sort of micro university is, I think something that's not totally well answered yet. Engagement is being interactive, for so long, entertainment has been a passive thing, right? You read a book, you watch a movie, you watch theater, you're just this passive observer of a world happening sort of over there. Video games was the first time that you started to be able to have some control over the world, maybe with a Kinect, maybe with a Wii, but that engagement is starting to pervade. You guys have got so many awesome options here in New York for immersive theater. We were super inspired by the movie The Game, if you ever saw that. Have folks seen the Game with Michael Douglas? If you haven't watched that movie, I highly recommend it. The part that's so awesome is, Michael Douglas starts as kind of this jerk, and over the course of this global game that really pushes him to the sort of limits of his senses, does he finally start to sort of learn empathy and become a good person. If the sort of old world is one where the consumer is is a passive one. We're big believers that this next phase is very active, and either you're directly creating the experience or you're at least a co-creator, right? The experience creator has set up a series of waveguides, and you're going to be able to kind of create inside of that space, but you still feel this incredible sense of autonomy, right? Even something. A number of the great open world games are still sort of guiding you along a path, but you feel like you have this sense of being able to kind of go anywhere. So you're familiar with these terms, VR, AR, MR. There's a bunch of stuff sort of in the periphery there. ARGs, for years. Escape games are fantastic. Immersive theater, and the transmedia term that maybe is going to die. The next one is, about humans being social. And I don't just mean social online, MMO kind of stuff. I mean social live, face-to-face, right? We really are social animals. We've got mirror neurons in our brain so we can watch each other do things and imagine ourselves doing it. That is best live. There's a bunch of interesting research coming out around loneliness and depression being directly tied to the fact that you're not hanging out with people in public, right? That social is a really critical aspect of this. Lost Connections, a wonderful book. A guy Johan, who suffered dramatically from depression after trying everything, realizes that the best solution is having friends. And that was like kind of a major revelation. It's shocking and awesome that it could be as simple as making sure you've got meaningful relationships. But you look at a lot of the blue zones and one of the all over the world, and one of the core underpinnings of those long life groups is a tight social fabric. One of the ones that just blew me away was the magnitude of social relationships on mortality is comparable to quitting smoking. I mean, what? You think about the amount of airplay in society we give to smoking, right? You're not allowed to do it here, you're not allowed to do it over there, all of the, huge Surgeon General warnings, all this other stuff. And there's this monster discontinuity with the amount that we're talking about hanging out together and having meaningful relationships. So that one was, I think, really fascinating. Another great book, Harvard sociologist Bowling Alone analyzed all the different ways in which humans have got together in public. Bowling leagues, church-going, Elks clubs, union attendance, everything he could get data on. And basically, after the 60s, attendance just craters, right? It just falls off a cliff. And almost perfectly, we're home alone depressed. And so that, the idea, oh my God, that again, the depression rising at the exact same time that we're not hanging out together, the even more terrifying part is that right with a collapse in hanging out in public is a decline in civic engagement. See that, right? In the 60s, civic engagement just falling off a cliff also. So think about that. We stop hanging out together in public and all of a sudden stop caring about the society in which we're operating, right? We stop caring about, our local community. And so, come up with whatever the theory is. Maybe when we're live, between bowling sets, you have this extra moment of time to be able to talk to each other about something important, right? Anybody who's worked with a remote colleague, it can be taxing to send a Slack or a text message, right? The sort of a water cooler or just passive conversation can be a lot easier than even all of the simple, forms of social we've got technologically. So we went all in and opened what we call a micro amusement park, huge 50,000 square foot complex with a whole variety of different kinds of things, from full bar and restaurant, lots of different kinds of interactive games, a whole carnival midway, reimagined arcade. My favorite part, an entire interactive theater, touchscreens on every table, facing a big stage. Nighttime, we run, sports game shows and whatnot. And Friday morning, it's science game shows for kids, and they're visiting it like it's a museum. So the whole place has this kind of transformer element to it, being able to serve different types of groups at different day parts. These are free roam virtual reality experiences. What we call story rooms, our version of escape rooms. They're a little shorter, they're automated, and this one you're on the bridge of a starship, all working together. The captain, the pilot, the gunner, the navigator, all trying to make sure we don't blow up the ship. I had to include this. This was an early rendering from like 2 years ago. That's the real thing, right? That's kind of amazing. I don't know if this back button will work. Oh yeah, good. So there's the real rendering, there's the real thing. At any rate, and then the next one is on impact. And this is the one that is the most exciting to me because the tools are just getting awesome. And, a couple of fun studies. So this is memory, a study done by the University of Maryland, where they were able to demonstrate that you in VR had improved recall for memory than if you were not in VR. So 8.8% increase in recall if you were creating a memory palace inside of VR versus on a desktop computer. So those are the two different memory palaces. The University of Kent found that you would work out 10% harder, 10% longer in VR than outside of VR. And this was fascinating to me, right? When you are, this sort of disembodied aspect now is a really great thing. You sort of have less awareness of your body and you're willing to work out harder. The other study, this was the University of Sydney, there's this, it was news to me, there's this Borg scale, which is your perceived level of exertion. And so they put people in a variety of different VR games and then ask them, how hard do you feel like you're working? Now they're trying to get all of them to work out, at kind of 80% of their maximum, but the perceived amount of work that they were doing was much lower in VR. A simple example would be running on a treadmill versus playing a game of soccer, right? Running on a treadmill, if you're like me, you're just watching the timer count down, right? You might play a game of soccer with a broken foot, but your head's in the game until it's over. So you can't really see this very well, but for that study, they put in Fruit Ninja, Squats, Hollow Point, and Portal, and all of the ones that were game-based, people indicated a much dramatically lower score on the Borg scale than you would have expected. And then the number of applications, and you can see down in the XR area, I've just pulled a few highlights. Axon, the taser company, using VR as a way to insert police officers in the bodies of people that they might be arresting as a way to build empathy. This is escape rooms being used for learning. This is a group in Michigan made an entire Candyland escape room all to teach English language arts. And for me, all of these things, right, entertainment is an incredible prototyping laboratory because in the beginning, the worst case is that you don't have fun. But on the back of these entertainment technologies, you can kind of ruggedize and establish what the grammar is. What are the ways in which we're going to that are the most effective, that get people coming back to be able to do this stuff? And then once those things are bullet tested, you can now take them and put them into much more high risk and important locations like learning and training and therapy and whatnot. And perhaps the biggest deployment of VR there is, Walmart is using this for training their own staff. This is fascinating. Achille is a game company that has statistically significant results for treating ADHD with a video game. They are literally in process of getting this FDA approved, so you could imagine kids in the future literally being given a prescription to play video games as part of an actual prescription, which is just so powerful and awesome. Everything from bear training to dementia. I know there's an incredible dementia piece here. Black Box VR is literally a gym that's just opened in San Francisco, all focused on virtual reality as part of their training regimen. Bionics using this both for training surgeons as well as in the operating room, so that while you're using augmented reality, literally inside of the operating room. This one was an immersive theater piece I did a couple of years ago as part of Cornerstone. The Cornerstone Theater Group said, hey, this is Fellowship, a play for volunteers. And so I bought a ticket and didn't really know much about it, and I showed up at the front, and I was like, hey, who wrote this? And they were like, who wrote what? Thanks for volunteering. And I was at a food bank in downtown Los Angeles, and I was like, oh, wow, okay. So I go inside, me and 80 other people, and we're all making sandwiches for the homeless. And over the course of making the sandwiches, and then we're decorating the bags, there's this, they're talking all about homelessness in LA, but it's really beautifully produced. They're dancing around. The whole thing is really, super entertaining. But we're making actual sandwiches and decorating actual bags that then went off, to the food bank. And finally, at the end, they break character and they bowed and, told us all about the production. But it was this amazing kind of blend of theater and impact, right? I had paid for the privilege of this and then had such a wonderful time, went out and evangelized to everybody that would listen. And so the idea that immersive theater piece could also be a volunteering exercise was I thought, really fantastic. Dave Eggers, who, not only being an incredible author, has is awesome nonprofit, teaching creative writing to kids. But the only way you get inside the nonprofit is going through a retail store. They have the Time Travel Mart in Echo Park. Here in New York, I think you guys have the Superhero Mart. But he has this incredible quote around, art as this incredible tool for empathy, and I think that's never been more true than now. A couple of my favorites, Carne Arena, which is Iñárritu's piece they installed at LACMA. Incredibly difficult to get a ticket. Once you finally do, you're in this tiny little cold room. And they had you take off your shoes, and you're sort of waiting in this cold room, and there's lots of shoes around. And then you finally get brought into this really dark room, and there's dirt on the ground, and they put a headset on you. And you are instantly at the border of the US as a family tries to run across the border and gets descended upon by Border Patrol. And you're free roaming. You're walking in the dirt. You can go and follow the uncle who runs over there or the kid who's cowering over here. And the whole thing, I came out just tears streaming down my face. There was no way you could convey that kind of emotion in a headline. Being there with them live was absolutely stunning. And coming out of it, the final portion of the experience was learning about all the people in the piece that you just seen. Really stunning, and as an empathy piece, just really put you right there. Another incredible piece is Hero. The folks who created that are here right now. This is, you are right in the middle of a square, as a bomb falls in the Middle East, and you have lots of moments, lots of moments you can take in order to be able to explore that scenario and choose to help or not. And it's so lifelike. I mean, you really are put in that scene. Lots of mixed reality, fire, heat. You really feel it. At our foundation, we use a bunch of these approaches. We have an entire approach to STEM and STEAM training, including teacher professional development. We aggregate clean waste from companies. So, Seas Candies buys too many heart-shaped boxes for Valentine's Day. We collect the extras as art supplies for kids, deploy physical tools, and then put on a whole variety of different events. The idea being that the events are super fun, but very short. All the impact happens in the programming beforehand, but the two really work together in a powerful way. This is our warehouse in Gardena with all the different bins of tons of stuff, really beautiful. So I've got just a couple of minutes left. I'm going to go super fast through a bunch of the things I'm super excited about coming up in the future, because there's so many great tools that are right around the corner. So seamless augmented reality, haptic effects, brain interfaces, and personal interactions. Let's just go into each one of those. This is a super short clip from this hyper reality by Keiichi Matsuda. I highly recommend you watch the whole thing. It's a very dystopian take on augmented reality, but I think it does a killer job. This is just in the moment halfway through when her VR headset reboots. And so this is without the AR headset. Her AR headset's about to come back online, and you'll see all the different things that come back in. So, she's on.
Hola, Juliana. Me alegra verte.
On the phone with customer support. She's got her little Tamagotchi, all the different augmentation. It's really it's a wild, video. Definitely watch the whole thing, but you can just see the amount of places in which this is going to invade our lives. It's awesome and terrifying. Axon VR, actually, I can't believe this. They've changed their name to Haptex, but this is their vision. They have a Haptex company with right now an incredible glove that Jeff Bezos was just wearing at their Remars conference. This is their vision, which literally looks like Ready Player One. Full haptic suit with an exoskeleton, so that you could do things like jump off a building and really feel the effects of that. So that's super magical stuff there. Neurable brain interface. I literally looked at something in VR with intent and was able to pick it up and move it around. This tech is getting awesome. This is not invasive. And then if you read Ready Player One, different from the book, the movie, they had the flick sync. And the flick sync was this super powerful, put them in the movies, in the war games in Monty Python, and as part of that you had to perform as one of the characters inside of that. I did a super rugged version of this at a USC hackathon where I was at the head of the table in Alice in Wonderland. And floating in front of me were my lines. And I said my lines, and then the scene would advance. And it was amazing, because in literally 10 seconds, I was doing voices and dancing around and completely forgot that I was, surrounded by, 50 college students. But the idea of being able to be in a movie like that, especially now that we're getting things like volumetric video capture, Intel stage, meta stage, both photogrammetry out and volumetric capture pointing in, the ability to be able to do this style of flick sync entertainment and learning is going to be really spectacular. That tech is just right around the corner. And then you've got things like computational media in Santa Cruz and a number of other places focused on basically being able to do full-blown conversational interfaces with robots, things like Sophia, or the magical part of immersive theater is that one-on-one with an actor. Right? But it really screws up the business model of running an immersive theater experience because humans are expensive. So what you're trying, what this allows you to do is give some of that same magic of one-on-one with an actor, but maybe at a more scalable rate. Now, obviously, Sophia is also super expensive right now, but hopefully that tech is going to get in line. I include this just because it's funny. This was, the caption is Siri on her way to the unemployment office after seeing that video of Sophie the robot. Thought that was great. At any rate, this is a super awesome time, right, you guys? If this was film, we'd be in the 20s and 30s. If it was computers, we're in the 70s. But this style of entertainment that we're talking about today, the impact that it can have, the number of domains that it's going to revolutionize, we are at the very earliest days, and we're still figuring out what that grammar is, what are the language of storytelling in these domains. There's a lot of opportunity. We still need to find who Quentin Tarantino and Orson Welles are. It's one of you. So let's go out and create some awesome stuff. Thanks so much for your time.